take the subway.
Hi, my name is Gabe Newell, and welcome to Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead is our first attempt to combine the strengths of single-player and multiplayer games. We wanted to take the character-driven storytelling of our single-player games, like Half-Life, and combine it with the social replayability of our multiplayer games, like Counter-Strike and Team Fortress 2. Plus, Left 4 Dead has zombie hordes and co-op, so what's not to like? To listen to a commentary node, put your crosshair over the floating commentary symbol and press your use key. To stop a commentary node, put your crosshair over the rotating node and press the use key again. Some commentary nodes may take control of the game in order to show something to you. In these cases, simply press your use key again to stop the commentary. Please let me know what you think after you've had a chance to play Left 4 Dead. I can be reached at gaben@valvesoftware.com. I get about 10,000 emails each time we release a game, and while I can't respond to all of them, I do read all of them. Thanks, and have fun.
Originally in Left 4 Dead, there were some features that made it possible for players to cause trouble for others. This behavior, known as griefing, can really ruin the experience of a game, especially for newer players. For instance, at this starting location, while players were still getting used to the controls, other players might push them off the roof and cause them to fall and die before the game really even gets started. This is one of the main reasons we changed the survivors' behavior so they could no longer push each other.
We experimented with a variety of different introductions for each campaign. For No Mercy, we tried a 40-second fly-in of the helicopter to give the player a more movie-like introduction to the game. Ultimately, we found that such elaborate cutscenes are hard to watch over and over in a game that's built for replayability. Playtesters wanted to get into the game and start playing right away, so we ended up going with a much more streamlined game intro.
While we were developing bots for Counter-Strike Source, we discovered that a few of us armed to the teeth with automatic weaponry against 30 knife-wielding enemy bots was a lot of fun. After shipping Counter-Strike Source in late 2004, we started experimenting with new game prototypes. That basic kernel of small team of friends against hordes of clawing enemies was something we kept coming back to, and we soon realized that the co-op versus the horde game had a ton of potential. We started work in earnest on what was to become Left 4 Dead in early 2005, and in about a week we had a very rough but very playable and fun prototype. We began our daily cycle of playtest, discuss, and modify that continued for the next 3 years. Left 4 Dead is the result of this evolutionary design process.
We treat the infected horde as a major character in Left 4 Dead and spend a lot of effort in making their movements believable. This includes hundreds of motion-captured animations that are algorithmically blended with the physics system to create characters that realistically interact with their environment and each other. The common hordes stagger around, cough, vomit, fight amongst themselves, lean against walls, sit on the ground, and lie down as part of their wandering behaviors. If something wakes them from their stupor, they become alert and look around for the source of the disturbance. When they see a survivor, they become enraged and acquire that survivor as a target, taking off at a full sprint, leaning into their turns, jumping and climbing over everything in their way, trying to get to their victim. We wanted to express this rage in their faces as well, so we found efficient ways for each member of the horde to make intense facial expressions. We chose to make their eyes a solid milky white, partially because it looks creepy and disturbing, but also because it's much less expensive than drawing and controlling separate eyeballs for each infected.
Left 4 Dead requires a variety of areas off the main path where the infected can spawn. We learned that once we had created these spaces, players naturally wanted to explore them. So fairly late in development, we decided to reward the players for going into these areas by allowing the random creation of bonus items such as pain pills, molotovs, pipe bombs, and extra pistols.
The most common attitude toward music in multiplayer games is that it just gets in the way. We wanted the music in Left 4 Dead to heighten the key emotional elements that should be inherent in a horror game, keeping in mind that everything in a game should contribute to gameplay. Therefore, we made a simple set of goals that the music should meet to keep people from turning it off. Players who leave the music on are treated to a variety of subtle audio cues that not only deepen the horror experience, but make them better players.
Once the game is in a playable state, we bring in friends and family who've never played the game to playtest specific areas, maps, or campaigns. These players bring a fresh perspective and objectivity to the game experience that often gives us new insights into what's working and what's not in our games. We observe their play and experience their exhilarations and frustrations. While playing, we encourage them to talk and ask questions to get a better idea of what they're thinking, though we let them know that we won't be able to answer any of those questions or offer any help. Watching these playtests helps us to tune the game so that the first-time players understand the game mechanics and the basic premise for how the game is played, and that we're achieving the right balance of challenges and rewards. After the play session is complete, there's a final Q&A session where we ask them about their experience to gain more specific insight than we were able to obtain through observation. One approach we use here is to ask them what the best and worst moments of the experience were for them and why. This is especially useful feedback to help us identify and prioritize our key issues in improving the game experience.
The designs of the boss infected were driven directly from weaknesses observed during our daily playtesting. For example, in the very early days of the game, there were only common infected. As a result, the survivors had a very simple rule of shoot everything that moves. Although this was fun, it lacked tactical depth and variety. The boomer's goal was to shake this simple rule up a bit, and he became the zombie that you do not want to shoot. Originally, the boomer just exploded when shot, instantly dealing a lot of damage to everyone nearby, or even the whole team if someone made a bad decision in close quarters. The boomer didn't yet have his vomit attack. That horde drawing ability belonged to the screamer. As the design of the game continued to evolve, the screamer was cut, and this horde attracting ability was transferred to the boomer's vomit attack. This attack fit the hugely obese and gluttonous visual design of the boomer well. Once the boomer could vomit, we realized that this was a much more interesting game mechanic and changed the explosion from an instantaneous damage-causing one into the current vomit-splattering one. The boomer's vomit has a couple of very interesting game mechanics. Along with being temporarily blinded with vomit in their eyes, whoever is hit by the vomit becomes it, and the incoming horde of zombies only attacks that player, essentially leaving him to the mercy of his teammates' willingness to protect him. The other players who have not been vomited on have to make a quick decision about how to deal with this new situation. Another feature of the vomit attack is that it is not an instantaneous blow that causes damage, unlike the previous exploding version of the boomer. Instead, there are often several seconds of dread and anticipation where the player knows the horde is coming and can prepare for the onslaught, but there's uncertainty about how things are going to play out. This kind of anticipatory drama is amazingly powerful and makes the whole Left 4 Dead experience work well and keeps the players on their toes.
The Screamer was a boss zombie who didn't have any actual attacks. He was bound in a straitjacket. You knew when he was around because of his crazed, maniacal cackling. The trick to the Screamer was that if he saw you, you had a moment to kill him before he ran away. And once the Screamer got away from the survivors to a hiding place, he would emit a loud, howling scream that would cause a huge mob of zombies to attack the survivors. While there were several exciting moments of knowing you had to chase him down to shoot him before he screamed, dodging zombies all the way, ultimately it proved too confusing for the survivors to discover how he worked or even to reliably notice him in the crowd. He was cut, and his horde drawing attack eventually evolved into the boomer attack.
To overcome the horror and darkness of Left 4 Dead, our highest priority was to create 4 believable people for the survivors, which you could connect with. With the design of Francis, we were looking for a large, imposing character that would fit in well during the zombie apocalypse. He needed to feel huge, fit believably into the world, and read well as a silhouette. The biker look was a strong choice, as the read of bare arms, a stained white shirt, and a leather waistcoat, all on a 6'5" frame, certainly made for an imposing pared-back shape that read clearly amongst the chaos. When dealing with an environment that is as dark as Left 4 Dead, a strong graphic read would be essential in combating the visual noise of hundreds of zombies frantically flailing about. The survivors are in effect visually our last hope and read as warm and enduring people in a world gone mad. The zombies, on the other hand, are desaturated, fairly cool in their colour palette, and lack a lot of the contrast of our survivors. The 4 characters were designed as a unit, so that while they stand out together from the rest of the world, their strong silhouettes and colour contrast provide clear reads for each individually, yet a signal team. We wanted to conjure 4 survivors that would resonate realistically, and thereby complete our horrifically rendered vision of the zombie apocalypse, which you, the player, now find yourself in.
To find a coherent visual look for Left 4 Dead, we first need to make choices that would help enhance gameplay in a very dark setting. The darkness is crucial to Left 4 Dead, as it forces players to stick together and encourages cooperative gameplay. We took advantage of lessons learned from our previous work on Team Fortress 2, particularly in regard to maintaining the readability of character silhouettes in a dark, chaotic environment. Meanwhile, we studied film techniques that have been employed successfully in dark settings to address the unique challenges and opportunities in a highly dynamic game environment. To accentuate the notion that you're playing through the ultimate zombie movie with a band of your friends, we added various filmic effects to the source engine. Using these effects, including color correction, film grain, contrast, and vignetting, we were able to define a stylistic filmic look that balances a visual drama with clear readability for players.
When we started what was to become Left 4 Dead in late 2004, or Terror Strike as it was known at the time, our team was quite small. However, we knew we had certain strengths, one of them being AI. AI is just shorthand for software that results in apparently intelligent behavior, which can take many different forms. In our case, we wanted to explore procedural content generation, creating an AI algorithm that would generate endless amounts of content for players to consume. The advantages of this are many. Not only would the game be infinitely replayable, but we could theoretically create huge amounts of game experience with a small team and some clever programming. The reason we decided on a humans versus the zombie horde motif was that the actual core game mechanic, shoot lots of zombies, is kind of a known fun quantity. That allowed us to take more risk on the side of procedurally populating our zombie world, than to experiment with a procedural system that manipulates the dramatic pacing of the game. Taking this risk has really paid off so far. Not only do we, the dev team, still enjoy playing our game after doing so for 3 years, but the procedural population system has really saved a ton of effort. For example, if we tweak some portion of how the game plays, we only have to do it in one piece of code, which then automatically populates all 20 of our maps and all future maps we or our fans create in this new way.
Local contrast adjustment is another film effect we've implemented in Left 4 Dead. We control contrast dynamically keyed to peak events in the game. When everything suddenly gets sharper, this is a visual parallel to an adrenaline rush. We use contrast to emulate a heightened sense of awareness. While players may not be consciously aware of these effects, they eventually come to associate subtle changes in visual presentation with shifts in the game's intensity.
Anyone designing a post-apocalyptic city has to deal with the problem of how to light it. Initially, our take on it was that the city still had power. You could see lights in many windows and the streetlights were all lit up. It didn't give us the atmosphere we wanted, but we felt we needed those light sources. When we started to unify the art and lighting design, one of the decisions was to eliminate a lot of lights. This gave us an opportunity to come up with other ways of bringing light into scenes. As we removed lights, we found we were also removing any sense of normality in the city. Without lit windows, or even the illuminated signage in front of stores, we removed some familiarity from the player's experience. Things are lit from lower angles than they would expect, from car headlights and oil barrel fires. These dramatic angles really enhance the sense of a creepy, desolate, almost hopeless environment. Now it's a city that you've seen, but not in a way that you've ever seen it before. Something's amiss. Something's off.
Car alarms are an example of what we call panic events, brief, intense, and maybe avoidable moments. In the classic post-apocalyptic movie, car alarms go off, but there's nobody around to respond. It's just another sign of things having gone down the tubes. We initially put the car alarm cars in just as a cool effect, but when we hit on the idea of having the alarms call up a horde of infected, we knew we'd found the right use for the car alarms in the world of the game. It's really great when this kind of classic genre element can serve a gameplay purpose as well.
Buildings by nature tend to be pretty square, and if there's a well-lit building with a dark sky behind it, you clearly see the squareness of the building, no matter how many AC units, chimneys, or other interesting shapes are stuck on top of it. So what we did here was flip the typical lighting scheme and put a bright sky behind dark buildings. Suddenly, the pipes and chimneys blend into the building's silhouette. Now, instead of seeing individual details like the AC units, you're seeing a much more complex, organic-looking skyline in the background. And because the mind expects a similar level of detail throughout an object, your imagination fills in the detail in the dark areas of the building based on the silhouette.
Early versions of Left 4 Dead allowed more skillful players to run off on their own without much fear of deadly consequences, bobbing and weaving around the infected before they could react. The addition of player slowdown, when hit by a common infected, severely reduced the player's ability to simply run straight through the horde. More importantly, the Hunter Pounce and Smoker Hang presented fatal situations for a player on his own. These additions instilled the fear of being alone in even the most seasoned of FPS players, reinforcing the value of tight teamwork.
Check this out.